Welcome in everybody to the Peegs.com midweek podcast. Matt Weaver, Jerry Kelly here on a Tuesday afternoon, 2 days removed from Indiana's 42-13 win over UCLA at the Rose Bowl. Matt, you were there. First of all, just the atmosphere, everything, being over there in LA, all the IU fans over there. Just what was the experience like?
Yeah, it was definitely a very good Indiana fan turnout. I got in Friday night, got to my hotel a little after 10 o'clock their time, and watched the local news, and they were showing they actually had a piece on Indiana fans kind of taking over Pasadena a little bit and being in town and everything. So it was pretty cool to see that. And then Saturday, a lot of IU fans. I went to the alumni, the Big Red tailgate thing. A lot of people there. I mean, it was very crowded. And then in the stands, you could see it. There was a lot of red. I don't know how you could see it on TV, but in the stadium, you could see it. So great turnout. Hopefully that leads to the great good turnouts in Memorial Stadium for the rest of the season. Starting this week, but the atmosphere as far as that was concerned was really cool to see.
Yeah, I had heard that the crowd was about maybe 80-20 UCLA Indiana fans. I don't know if you want to ballpark it around there, but just watching on TV, they sounded loud. The IU fans did.
Yeah, and where I was, the press box sits over one side of the stands. I couldn't tell as much on the side I was on. On the far side, it was, I mean, it was probably close to 50-50. I mean, it looked like there was a story, I guess they bust students in. They hadn't started class, but they put a bunch of students right behind the IU bench, down like in the lower part of the stadium. Then there was some, but you could see red even scattered, even not in the IU section, just scattered throughout the crowd, throughout the stadium. So 80, I mean, I guess it could be. To me, that I think that's a little bit low for the IU turnout, but whatever it was, they were loud, especially as the game went along and Indiana really started to take control and put UCLA away. And then at the end of the game, I think probably a lot of people saw the tweet I put out with them chanting, I think it was "Let's go Hoosiers," and they did that a number of times. I just picked up one. They were doing that at the end, and they were loud and boisterous. There in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, you were there. I know you were out and about a little bit pregame. Just going out, checking out all the different events. What was the vibe that you got going into it? At least from being around IU fans going into that one.
I think they were confident. I think they were excited. I think they felt good about the game. The people I would spend some time with at the tailgate thing they had at the golf course there. I think people are excited. I mean, like I said, it was a great turnout. They had a huge tent, like one of those huge tent, and I remember I went to get food and there was nowhere to sit, so I had to kind of stand and eat, which, yeah, it's okay, but I mean, it just tells you how many people were there. I mean, it was a lot of people. I actually saw Kurt Signetti's wife there, kind of when I was in line to get food. Saw her walk by, so which was very cool. But yeah, I think people are excited, and I think if there was any kind of maybe hesitation because the first two games, and listen, UCLA is not a great team. They're going to struggle to win a bunch of games this year, but that's Indiana doesn't go on the road in against Power Four teams and win by 4 touchdowns. That just doesn't usually happen. And I think after this game, people I think are even more pumped up. And you've probably seen on Twitter, Kirk Cinetti's been trending. IU football has been trending. So it's not just people here talking about it; it's nationally. People are talking about what's going on with the program.
Yeah, I mean it's been pretty tremendous. I mean, you kind of felt like if the ball really got rolling downhill this year, that this would kind of happen. You would really kind of wake up the rest of the country. Maybe not so early in the season as they've done, but I mean, if you look at the manner in which they're winning these 3 games, obviously not great opponents, but the manner in which they're winning, I mean, they're blowing out, just completely dominating their opponents. I think that is kind of factors into it as well, which is why, I mean, this is a little bit, looking after the game, but I was kind of surprised Indiana only got 13 votes in the AP poll this week. I thought, I didn't think they were going to be ranked, but I thought they were going to be more, towards that 25, 26, 27 spot. But obviously the voters, I don't know how they take it. Some of them just look at the win-loss, but when you look, put these games into context, I mean, Indiana's averaging 50 points a game. They are just steamrolling these teams. You even think back to the UCLA game. I don't know about you, but there was never really a point in that game where you thought Indiana was really on the ropes. There were some moments where UCLA kind of had their chances to claw back, but it never really felt like UCLA was really threatening Indiana.
Yeah, I mean they had to drive, and I think the one there's it's not a perfect team, and the one kind of little area of concern is the end of drives on defense, giving up points. And then they came out, and I remember thinking, well, it's 21-7. If UCLA goes down the field and gets a touchdown, then all of a sudden they're going to have some momentum. And they went down, they got a field goal, and of course, I think that was a drive where they were aided by I think the CJ West targeting happened on that first drive of the second half, and there might have been another penalty or two that was a little bit iffy. I mean, if you take away some of the penalties, it was kind of like FIU. They really only put together one drive, against IU's defense. And what did Indiana do? They turned around and, answered that field goal and went down and went up 28-10. And I felt like from there, I think that's when it kind of was the nail in the coffin. And the other thing that was impressive is how Indiana, the first half, I think they rushed like 48, 50 yards on like 15 carries. They finished with, where's it at? 123 on 29 carries, and you take out the lost yardage. 4.2, that's not bad. So you think about it, they had about 75 yards on about 15, 14 carries in the second half. So it tells you they wore them down. And Kurtz, I asked him that after the game, and he mentioned that they wanted to break their spirit, break their will, and I think they did that in the second half. And that's not something when Indiana's playing another Power Four team. I don't care how good or bad they are. That's not something they usually do. They struggle to do that against FCS teams and mid-major teams in the past.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. And, I had made the show, I was on the call-in show with Ken, and then I know you had talked about this with, the Hoosier Hysterics on their podcast. I thought Mike Shanahan called just a tremendous game. I would say, 98% of the time he called the right plays, just, really kind of knowing when to, push the tempo a little bit, slow it down. He caught UCLA's defense on their heels a couple of times that resulted in first downs, long gains. And like you were saying with the running game too, I thought that the first half Indiana wasn't terrific in the running game. They're getting 3-4 yards here and there, but nothing too sizable. But the fact that they, Shanahan and Cignetti were confident enough to stick with the run game and into the second half. Like you mentioned, it really did kind of break UCLA's defense, and then that's when you kind of saw Curtis Rourke, go to work there, just picking up chunk plays through the air.
Yeah, I mean, and I said I don't think we've talked enough about Mike Shannon, and you really saw it. I mean, the play calling. I mean, they had on that first drive, I think it was 3 third downs, and one of them they had a 3rd and 11. They get called for a procedure penalty. They're 3rd and 16, and Curtis Rourke throws a dart, I think, to Surratt to get like 23-yard gain, and he did that. I mean, the touchdown. I think that was the second drive, the touchdown to Keyshawn Williams. It was 3rd and 8. And that play was fantastic. I mean, they just kind of brought him behind the other receiver. He was wide open, and once he got the first down easy, and then it was just whether he was going to score or not, which he did. So the play calling was terrific. I mean, and obviously having a guy like Rourke he's just really smart. He sees there might have been maybe 2 throws where I thought, yeah, that wasn't a great decision. There was one where he threw it into double coverage, almost got picked. There might have been one other one, but other than that, he threw the ball 33 times. If you throw the ball 33 times, you got maybe 2 throws that are kind of iffy. It's pretty good, especially at this level. And UCLA has some athletes. It's not like they don't have some players. They're just trying to find their footing. But I thought he was terrific. And here's the other thing. If you would have told me Indiana had 150 points in the first 3 games and they were averaging, you got to be over 200 yards, close to 250 a game, all the touchdown passes that Rourke's thrown, and Don McCauley had 1 reception. Even against the schedule, I've been like, no way. That just tells you how deep they are. And what's exciting is you expect Donovan to get more involved. And I think on the broadcast, I couldn't watch it. I think they said he was limited because he had been out. His package was limited for the game. As he gets more involved, just think about, I mean, this offense, there's still more to go. And that's why I said after week 1, when people are like, oh my gosh, they didn't look great. I was not concerned, and because I felt like that this was coming, and I think they're just going to keep getting better. I think there's still more room for this offense to go.
Yeah, I had that same thought too with the receivers. I mean, if I ask you right now who is Indiana's number one receiver, I don't really think there is one. I think there's, maybe 3, 4, 5 number one receivers, and it's just, who has a hot hand. I mean, you look at the last game coming into the UCLA, and Keyshawn Williams had 1 catch, through the first 2 games. Then he comes out, rips off 2 touchdowns. I mean, Omar Cooper again. Elijah Surratt, he was kind of quiet, but he still finished with 4 catches for what was it? 54 yards. Miles Cross, 6 catches. I mean, you look at Indiana's receiving room, and we kind of knew this going into the year. Maybe the sort of the outsiders kind of didn't see it the same way. But we kind of knew that Indiana was going to be very talented at receiver, and you're kind of seeing it show up. It's not a matter of this guy's going to start and play all the snaps, right? It's what's working for him, who's getting open, and that's ultimately who they're going to put on the field.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I remember when they had Cody Latimer, he was the go-to guy. There were other good receivers. You had Ty Freifogel a few years ago, who was pretty much the alpha dog at receiver. Like you said, I mean, I think there's a camaraderie or a chemistry with Miles Cross and Curtis Rourke because they know each other from Ohio. But you can see him looking for Surratt too. And Surratt's one of those guys. He may not be the fastest guy or be the most athletic guy. I'm not saying he's not a good athlete. He just may not, but he's always open. And he's got great hands. He made some really good catches with the defender right on him. And then Miles Cross has been terrific. I mean, two one-handed catches, and I know that doesn't make you a great receiver, but he just made some great plays. And I said this for the season. I don't know if that there's a stud, like a big time stud receiver on this roster. I mean, you probably maybe say McCauley based on what he did at the end of last year, but they have so many. And EJ Williams hasn't played either. And EJ Williams was almost as good as McCauley the last 4 or 5 games last year. He was having a great season. The Illinois game, he was terrific. And there was other games where he played really well. And he hasn't seen the field at all. So, it's exciting to think about, how much more they've got to go. And then, running back, obviously Ellison and Lawton have been kind of the bell cow guys. I don't determine playing time. I would like to see more of Elijah Green because every time he's in the game, he bursts something open. Like he's very explosive. But right now it's working. They've got almost an embarrassment of riches, you could say, at the skill positions on offense. And then you throw in Zach Horton, who's a security blanket for you there. So it's a lot of fun to watch. There may not be a All-American at those positions, but they've got they're as deep as anybody in the Big Ten, in my opinion, at the skill spots on offense.
Yeah, you mentioned the running backs. I thought they did a terrific job of picking up blitzes.
Yeah.
That is one of the things that Signetti is huge on is his running backs. Being able to play all 3 phases: pass pro, running the ball, catching the ball. And I think that's kind of why you're seeing Lawton and Ellison kind of running away a little bit with that that workhorse a load, but just because of their ability to pick up those blitzes. And I think like we said before, Kalon Black and Elijah Green, they both have another year of eligibility left, so you're hoping that can kind of come along for them. But I mean, I agree with you on Elijah Green. He's looked terrific in the limited snaps he's had. And then Zach Horton. I mean, James Bamba going down is not obviously ideal for Indiana, but Zach Horton has played the majority of snaps at tight end anyways for them. And in this last game against UCLA, I really really like how they kind of utilized him. Sort of in the RPO game, play actions, what have you, over the middle. We saw him. I think he had one. I think it was like a 15-yard gain over the middle. If Indiana could start using him and incorporating him more into the offensive scheme, I think that's going to open up even more than what they already have.
Yeah, and what was interesting, I didn't notice this until I was looking at and I was on the far end. So when Indiana scored first, they went. I'm guessing on TV they went right to left. Like I said, I was at the far end, so I was at the far end of when the first quarter when they were going, and I remember looking. They got down near the goal line. I remember looking, and I was like, "Who's 84?" They put Tyler Stevens in an 84 jersey, and he was listed at tight end on the sheet you get, in the press box. So it looks like I'm guessing that may be a somewhat permanent move, or at least for the time being. And we don't know what James Bomba's status is. I'm guessing it's probably long term. I don't want to sit here and say season ending because we don't know, but that to me, I thought that was a great move. I mean, Tyler Stevens kind of been a backup. If you ever need him to go back to O-line, he could, but now you can use him. It's like having a 6th offensive lineman. So, and like you said, getting Horton, who I think is a really good weapon. If you could get him even more involved, especially over the middle of the field, they're just going to be really difficult to stop. If this O-line can block like they did, and UCLA really tried to pressure him, you could see it. They were trying to heat him up all game, sending guys from off the edge all over the place. They tried to heat up Curtis Rourke, and I'm that long throw to Miles Cross where he got tackled at the 1. If Justice Ellison doesn't pick up the blitzer, that play does not happen. And he did a great job. I mean, they, like you said, they were really good at picking up blitzes. And to me, it's just these guys are well coached. They're not always going to be perfect. Nobody is, but they're well coached. This staff has done a great job of implementing their scheme and what they expect. And these guys are living up to it. There's a lot, like I said on the Hoosier Hysterics podcast, we still got 9 games to go. There's a lot of games to go, but this is a legit team. I don't think anybody can sit here and say this is not a legit football team. And they excuse me, they can make a lot of noise in the Big Ten.
Yeah, and it's not like they went into this game and won a close one. It was fluky. I mean, they put it on UCLA, even with all the penalties, the targeting penalties, which we'll get into in a second. Indiana was clearly the better team, even if they might have not had as much talent as UCLA going into Saturday's game. Defensively, I do want to talk about Brian Haynes and kind of the just the continued success they're having on defense because as good as Kurt's work was, I thought on offense, I thought Bryant Haynes and his ability to continue to even with CJ West and D'Angelo Pons going down with the ejections, just his ability to keep that defense tight, keep them together. We continue to see the swarm defense that has made them successful through the first 2 weeks. And you think back to sort of what has not worked for Indiana in the past, and it really comes down to fundamentals. We did see a little bit more looseness with the tackling this game. I thought they could have had a couple more sacks. But
Yeah.
just when it comes down to it, Indiana is just so much more fundamentally sound. You're not seeing coverages being blown on the back end. I think a lot of credit has to go to Brian Haynes for really kind of turning around this unit in such a short period of time.
Yeah, and that was probably the one little bugaboo was the tackling. And I'm not making excuses. It seemed like maybe I don't know if you could see this on if it's showing up on TV. Sometimes like the defensive players are having a little bit of trouble with footing. So like sometimes when they're going for tackle, and that's not an excuse. I mean, UCLA to deal with the same thing. But yeah, on that last drive, I think they had on that run where Garbers broke free and scrambled and got down to like the 2 or 3 yard line. It looked like they had him, and there was another time I think they might have had him for a sack. But we're kind of nitpicking here, obviously. But yeah, the defense is. I just I was looking it up, and obviously 3 games in, 3 of the weaker opponents, fourth in scoring defense at 7.7 in the Big Ten, second in rushing defense at 50, just under 54 yards a game, and then passing defense third at 126.7. I mean, and like I said, these are not the we're going to see. They're going to see better opponents, no doubt about it. But third in tackles for loss, which is something they were known for at James Madison, being really good at tackles for loss. They got 19, through 3 games. Sacks, they're leading the Big Ten in sacks with 12. And I don't. And one thing, I don't think they blitzed a lot to get those sacks. I think they the front four has done a pretty good job of getting after the quarterback on their own. To me, the biggest thing is, and Tom Allen said this, and he's 100% right. Um, the stat that matters the most is points. Obviously, giving up yards is going to happen. The way football is evolved and the way the rules are, it's really hard to shut people out or hold them down. 10, 13 points unless you're playing a bad team. If you can get them in third and longs and get off the field when they get in those down and distances, and then if they do get in the red zone, holding the field goals, you're going to be pretty good. Yardage doesn't bother me. It's your third down conversion rate on defense and your red zone, stoppage rate on defense, and then the points you're giving up. If you can do that, your team's got a chance. And like I said, this offense is going to be, in my opinion, 30 plus points a game. I think for most weeks, there's going to be some weeks where weather or whatever, or the other opponent's pretty good. But I think this offense is going to be productive and keep them in a lot of games. Defense just has to do their job, and so far they've done more than their job. They've been great.
Yeah, that was one of my concerns going into the year. You obviously knew Brian Haynes' track record coming in, but if you had to pick, offense or defense, which one you thought could struggle a little bit more to start the year, I thought it was going to be defense.
Mm-hmm.
And quite honestly, they have more than exceeded my expectations. You think about the front four, going into the year, Signetti had always said, we want to build our defenses from the trenches outward, and that's clearly showing up this year. You're getting contributions from just a host of guys, and even if they're not getting to the quarterback for sacks necessarily, the pressure is there. In the UCLA game, Garbers was running for his life for most of the game there. And I thought Indiana once again, they played 2 quarterbacks the FIU game and UCLA that are elusive, that are shifty, that can move out of the pocket, and they've done a good job of containing him, containing both of them through those in those 2 games as well. Matt, I do want to talk about the penalties a little bit. I don't want to spend too much time on them, obviously, because they are what they are. They're in the past. Indiana still won by 29. The 2 targeting penalties, did you think both of them were by I guess the letter of the law? Did you feel like they were warranted? And then obviously the Linnell Carr roughing penalty was I thought was pretty atrocious.
Yeah, the first one I'll start with. I'll actually start with D'Angelo Pons. That one I was, and I just because it looked like to me it was a defenseless receiver because he was trying to get, and he did kind of launch himself into the head or neck area. That one I could live with. I mean, I know the CJ West one. What bothered me, the ball's on the ground and West was diving down to try to recover what was at that time basically a live ball, and his helmet. My thing with that is if you want to call that a personal foul or even a target, and Ken asked this yesterday, and I brought this up in the past. There needs to be different levels of targeting. I mean, if it's like an egregious, malicious hit where a guy launches himself and he's putting his head down and just trying to take the guy's head off, yeah, I have no problem with being an ejection and being, if it's the second half, he sits out the first half of the next week. But some of these targeting, when a guy slides down, the guy's already into his tackle. I don't understand what they expect the defensive player to do. There's nothing you can do. You can't all of a sudden just stop your body in midair and not hit a guy. And I don't understand how the hit on Aiden Fisher was not targeting.
Yeah.
They said it was more the guy lowered his head and hit him in the side of the head. And I get he's a ball carrier, but I thought if you had lowering of the head or crown of the helmet into the head or neck area, that was targeting. But maybe I'm wrong on that. So, and then, it wasn't just the Linnell Carr one. There was one, I think Kamara had a sack. And his arm hit the shoulder pad of Garber's, and then when it bounced off his shoulder pad and scraped across his top. I mean, come on, man, what are we doing? Like the people in the press box at UCLA who covered were laughing. They're like, "This is what we've had to deal with." I mean, I don't know if those were Pac-12 officials or former Pac-12. I don't know, but they acted like this was the norm out there, where basically this kind of stuff is called, and it was just, I mean, it was insane. The Linnell Carr one, this quarterback posture, I don't even know what that means. I mean, he didn't hit him. He didn't hit him in the head or neck. He hit him in the chest. He didn't go low. I don't know what you're supposed to do. Like, I don't understand what you're supposed to do as a defensive player. It's just kind of ridiculous. It was. I said it to text some people. It was one of the worst officiated games I think I've ever seen. They missed some holds on UCLA on a couple of plays, but that happens. But yeah, it is what it is. I had a question for some people out there. I'll ask you this question. If Indiana's up 35-0 on Saturday, do you play D'Angelo Pons and CJ West in the second half?
I would say yes. I would say yes, just to kind of get him into a game flow.
Yeah.
Just so they're not sitting out an entire week when they don't have to. I would say yes. You don't want to keep them out there for the entire game. There's no point in keeping them out there with the twos and the threes. We saw against FIU and Western Illinois that the ones came out to play the first, a series of the second half. So I could see a scenario with that. Maybe they stay out there a little bit longer. I would personally play them. I think they would want to play first of all.
Yeah.
And second of all, you're only 4 weeks into the season, right? They're still kind of getting their feet under them a little bit here. And these are important games to just kind of ease your way in. So I would say yes.
Yeah, I agree. It was just curious because to me, it's something that you, as a coach, you might think about. If we're up 5 touchdowns and we're playing twos and threes. But yeah, I mean, I don't know that I don't think this game will be against Charlotte as bad as was at halftime as Western Illinois was. But I can see them being up, a sizable amount. But yeah, I would at least get them at least 2 or 3 series, and then hopefully maybe you can get them, I don't know how many snaps, maybe 15, 20 snaps each. You know what I mean? Just so that they're not, like you said, you're not sitting out an entire week. But yeah, it was something that crossed my mind when I was like, okay, they're going to be out the first half. And if you're way up, do you play them? But yeah, I'm with you. I was just curious what people's thoughts were on that. Most people were like you. Yeah, I would play them just so they can get some snaps, but not play them for, the entire second half.
Yeah. Hindsight's 2020 with both of those ejections, but just imagine if that would have happened in the Charlotte game, those 2 targetings, and you're out against Maryland and Northwest. I mean, then you're really looking at some problems there. Now, obviously, Indiana has the luxury of playing Charlotte next week, so it shouldn't matter a whole ton having those guys out for the first half. But I mean, if that keeps happening, if this kind of officiating keeps happening going forward, I mean, it's going to be a long season to sit through, Matt.
Yeah, and real quick, I mean, I think Pons is terrific. Obviously, he's one of their best corners. I think you can absorb that one a little bit better if it would have happened against Charlotte. I'm not, Jamari Sharp's played some. I know he was up and down, but West is a bigger loss just because there's not a ton of depth. Now I will say this: he's not played a ton of snaps. I said this in the PFF story. Mario Landino is going to be a good player. Like you can just see it. Like they put him on the edge and he blew by there. And I know their tackles weren't great, but I mean he's a freshman. Playing in the Rose Bowl, and he was blowing by guys. He's played 22 snaps, and I know PFF grades not everything, but I really like Mario Landino. I think he's got a chance to be good. And if you look at him, I mean, he was ranked like 250th D lineman. Not that matters, but it just shows you that this staff can see, they can see stuff and they can develop things. And obviously, Pat Coates and oh geez, his name escaped me, the DN
Buda
coach,
Williams.
have done a great job with these guys. And Landino, wherever he ends up, he's right now kind of playing edge. I think eventually he probably becomes like more of a three tech. But he's a good looking player, long, 6'4", he's pushing 280, 290, I think. Athletic. I just, kind of throw that out there. I mean, I think he can help you with CJ West. He's not CJ West, obviously, but yeah, hopefully we don't have to see this kind of calls. And there's going to be bad calls. I mean, it happens every week, and these guys are human. I just understand when you go to a camera how you can still get it wrong. I mean, it's one thing when in real time for a guy to miss a call, it happens because it's moving so fast. But when you stop it and go look on the camera and you still get it wrong, that it's baffling to me.
Yeah. It was funny too, watching on TV, listening to Terry McCauley trying to explain away some of these penalties as somehow the letter of the law. It's just like Kurt Zagetti said on Monday. At some point, you got to use common sense. Like
Yeah.
CJ West was not malicious at all. Linnell Carr, I mean, that is about as clean of a sack as you can have. I don't really know what you could do differently there. And it was funny watching the broadcast too. That Aiden Fisher targeting penalty that they reviewed, they had a graphic made. They literally had a graphic ready to go showing like the exact inch dimension on their helmet that you can hit with, that you can't hit with. I'm like, what are we doing here? I mean,
Yeah.
it's crazy. Hopefully we don't have to. Hopefully there's not too many more games like that this year. But the Big Ten's gonna Big Ten, so we'll see. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
I did wanna mention though. I mean, the fact that Indiana was able to go through that kind of adversity, I thought first of all was a good thing because that was the first time this year, and I tweeted this out. I'm like, this is the first time this year that we're really gonna see what Indiana's culture building, Signetti's culture building is made of here. Really in the early the second half there, and I thought they passed with flying colors. The fact that they never flinched after those targeting penalties, after just all those the penalties, even on UCLA side, they just never flinched. And I think it starts at the top. I mean, Signetti, they kept going to close-up shots of his face. He would sigh a little bit, but that's it. And then it's on to the next play. And I think it starts at the top. You see your head coach on the sideline, composed, and it really manifests throughout the rest of the team. So I thought that was just a really, really good, strong first test of adversity there.
Yeah, and it's not just losing the guys, like you said. It was those roughing the passer penalties and some of the other ones, and we've seen in the past that kind of stuff cause a game to go sideways for an Indiana team. And listen, Tom Allen did a lot of great things, and I think the world of him. But when you melt down on the sideline, how do you expect your team not to melt down on the field? And while Signetti, I'm sure, had some words for the officials and probably said some things and gave his 2 cents, it was he realized we can't dwell on this. We got to move on. You can't worry about a play that happened 2-3 plays ago because those next 2 or 3 plays might determine. Now, obviously, in this game it didn't, but you might be in a close game where 2 or 3 plays determine the outcome of the game. And so, I've said about teams take on the personality of their coach. He is a confident, poised, composed guy who is intense and passionate, but it doesn't, that doesn't overtake, his emotion doesn't get the better of him like we've seen in the past. And his team plays that way. They play with emotion, they play with passion, but it's not, they're not out of control. And I think those kind of penalties as a coach you can live with because, they had to have a procedure too. Those weren't like pre-snap, you're not focused kind of dumb penalties. These were, you're playing hard, you're playing aggressive. And it just, some of it's bad luck. Like I said, some of these targeting things throughout time have been bad luck. And I think the coach is probably okay with it. I'm sure they'll coach them better, try to do it better. But if I was a coach, I'd be pleased with the effort and aggressiveness I got from my defensive unit.
Yeah. I mean, 14 penalties Indiana had, 2 ejections for targeting, and they still won by 29 points. I mean, this is about as complete of a performance as you could ask for, considering the circumstances. And I mean, just really continuing what they've shown through 2 weeks here. Matt, I did want to touch on the Charlotte game quickly. Indiana 3-0. We kind of predicted that. And I had written a little bit about this, but a chance to go 4-0, get yourself 2 wins away from bowl eligibility going into the thick of the Big Ten season. You shouldn't really have much of an issue with Charlotte, considering kind of the slow start they've had to the season. We're chalking this one up as a win, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I think when we talked last week, we were talking about the UCLA game. Not that I thought if they lost UCLA today, they wouldn't beat Charlotte, but to me, the UCLA was a 2-win game. I mean, I felt good about you beat UCLA. You're going to be 4-0 getting into the Big Ten season, and we talked about it. And I said this even before this, and I'm not, but I said 6-0 was a realistic start for this program. I mean, the way it laid out, and I said on the hysterics. I mean, this schedule's not easy, but compared to schedules of the past, it's so much more manageable because you got to pad your win column early on before you really got to some of the tougher games. And some of these teams that we thought, we'll see. I mean, Michigan still got a lot of talent, but they've not looked very good. They got blown out at home and they played two. I mean, Arkansas State and Fresno State, they did not look great against those teams. But there's still a long way to go. They got a lot of talent, but it'll be interesting that, I flipped my pick on that game. On the hysterics. I think that's a game because I'm really curious to see where Michigan is at that point in the season. Nebraska looks to me like the second best team on the schedule so far. Now we'll see how we'll see. They got a freshman quarterback, and obviously Ohio State's the cream of the crop in the Big Ten. At least that's what it looks like so far. So, but yeah, it's 4-0 coming up. It looks like, and then Maryland at home, which will be a test. I mean, they are going to have some athletes, and then that Northwestern game, which you just never know. The weather could be crazy. But here's the thing: Northwestern can play defense. They're pretty solid defensively. They can't. Their offense is not very good. They've already made a change at quarterback. They're struggling offensively. I mean, they won at a couple overtimes with Duke and still only scored 20 points. I mean, it's a struggle up there. If you can get 3 touchdowns in that game, you're probably going to win that game against Northwestern. So, don't want to put the cart before the horse, but there's a lot of momentum with this team right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it's really kind of waking up the rest of the just the national media here. Not just the wins, but like I said, the manner in which they're winning. And then you put up again, another really strong performance against a team like Charlotte, which is a team that you should beat by a lot of points. You're 4-0. I don't think it's going to be too long before you see Indiana creeping into those AP top 25 rankings. Matt, last thing I did want to end on. If I would have told you at this point in the season that Indiana would probably be 4-0, you would have said what at the beginning of the year?
I said I would agree with that. I felt like they were going to be 4-0. I would have said the transfers have come in and they're the guys they brought in. I mean, when I looked at the snap chart for offense and defense, they played 37 guys total in that game. I think it was like 20 on offense and 17 on defense. Mario Landino was the only true freshman to play. Now they had guys playing on special teams, 3 guys on freshman, but he was the only freshman to play on offense or defense. So 36 guys. Of those 36, I think 20 are transfers. If you look at, obviously Rourke's the leading passer, of course. If you look at the pass catchers, Surratt's at the top. Miles Cross is, I think, number 2 or 3. Omar Cooper's in there. Keyshawn Williams has got a couple touchdown catches. Zach Horton obviously is a leader. Really the only spot on the team on offense where it's more Indiana guys. When I say Indiana guys who were here last, is offensive line, because you got Carter Smith, you got Kadick, you got Drew Evans and Bray Lynch, and obviously you thought Kidwell was going to be in there. But I mean, and then defensively, it's the same kind of thing. The linebackers. So they've done a great job. These guys so far have been up to the competition. The uptick in level has not been a problem. Like I said, we'll see how they go through 9 games. Depth will be key, obviously, going forward. But hopefully there's some guys that can still develop, and that's where those bye weeks. A bye week is almost like a shortened spring practice, because that's where you can kind of give your guys who've been playing a lot a little bit of a break. They're going to be beat up 6 weeks in the season. Their body's going to be a little beat up. You can give some of these guys, and the coaches will go out recruiting, but some of these guys who are 2 and 3s who aren't getting as many snaps, let them get some development time. But yeah, I mean, I thought they'd be 4-0. I thought the defense would come around. They've come around quicker than I thought. I'm with you. I thought it would be a little bit more of a struggle defensively. Not that I think they had talent, but that side of the ball seems to maybe take a little bit longer to come around, especially with so many new faces. But they start off the season strong, and other than the end of the first half kind of issue, they've been terrific. I mean, they have really been terrific. Stopping the run, getting after the quarterback, and then obviously the offense is just every week you can just see it getting better and better.
Yeah. Indiana keeps making believers out of those who are kind of resistant, I think, at first. So we'll see what the crowd turnout is against Charlotte. I think as the season progresses and the Big Ten teams start coming to town, you'll start seeing the stands really pack at Memorial Stadium. Matt, we'll be there on Saturday against Charlotte. We'll have full coverage as well. I know you had a good time out in Pasadena. Indiana plays at noon on BTN, the non-conference finale. We'll have full coverage there. For Matt Weaver, but Jerry Kelly, we'll see you guys over on Peegs.com.